Hello, my name is Michael McCauley, and I will be discussing monitoring student behavior with technological resources with my colleague here, Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach Huffman. I am in Micah's cohort, and yeah, we're group partners for this week's activity. So we're going to be talking about Class Dojo and sounds like a few other software apps that we've researched. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start with Class Dojo then, shall we?
Yep, sure.
All right, I'll go ahead and start with my observations of this. So I would say the advantages of Class Dojo are, all the things of a descriptive student profile. You can customize yourself to identify strengths and weaknesses about each student in your classroom. That's good because that's individualized, and it's like an advanced learning profile card for each student online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're also able to connect this with parental information catered to each student so that parents can be involved. So there's a holistic approach to learning from the teacher, the student, and the parent. I would also imagine one of the advantages being you could share this with the administrators. That way, the principals and other people know what's going on in one's classroom. So it's very transparent. It's also good you're able to share moments in the classroom with the parents with videos and pictures and things like that. You have PDF files to give the parents where they enter a code and they can access your class's profile in Class Dojo, and all that's super positive stuff there. However, one thing it lacks, I feel like, though it's quite sophisticated in detail, it doesn't seem to have a very sophisticated measuring system. So, the things that students do and don't do, like maybe they read well, you can add that as a characteristic for a student. Maybe they get up out of their chair very often. Maybe they're often late, and there's positive and negative points to attribute to that. That indicate the seriousness of the positive or the negative trait that the student is exhibiting. However, it doesn't really measure it. So if a student's late, okay, that's maybe -2 points for that attribute the student has. But how often are they late? Why is it that they're late? It seems like there's not a lot of room for measuring the exact details of those attributes that you can access on that site. Um, and so, as a positive, one way it could benefit one's classroom is that one carries all the information with one's class with them all the time. It's backed up. It gives a digital representation of one's class profile, and kind of brings the classroom to the digital age. However, one thing that this could distract is that if it's used too often, perhaps it can take away from personally getting to know students. If one is busy record keeping with an online program or an online app such as this, maybe that's going to take away from one-on-one, face-to-face, raw observation of that student. Also, if the teacher's using it in the classroom, that can create a bad precedent, letting students know it's okay to use their phones in the classroom, and maybe they might abuse this privilege. And so, clear guidelines would definitely have to be set for this program. So, yes, and we'll get to our recommendation later. But first, let's go ahead and hear what Zach has to say about that. I've talked quite enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, those are all interesting points. I guess I agree that it is just kind of like a 1 point system, and so you can't get like too specific. If I'm trying to commend good behavior or give a consequence for poor behavior, sometimes I'm not totally sure what I want to give it for. However, that being said, you can create your custom, a custom thing that if there's not something already on there, like maybe you want to create like a thing for out of his seat when he's not supposed to be.
Sure.
You can do that. Micah, you teach elementary school, is that right?
I teach kindergarten, actually. Yeah.
Kindergarten. Okay, that's really great because before I started teaching computer science, I was actually in the sub pool for the same school. And my very first subbing assignment was for a K-5 classroom.
Oh, okay.
And one of the first, these kids are angels. Like they really don't need this really, but one of the first things that the teacher said to me, I came in a couple days before just to get the lay of the land and meet some of the kids, was that they respond really, really well to positive reinforcement. So, rather than kind of getting on their case if they do something wrong, like commending them for doing something right. And it's almost like a reverse psychology. You can, if things are starting to get a little bit out of control in the classroom, you can see who is doing what you want them to be doing, even if it's just one kid who's like silently working at their desk like they're supposed to be. Then you like make it a show of like, wow, I'm so impressed with, so and so for doing what I asked or being quiet and working at the desk. So you had mentioned that there was there are the positive and the negative feedback categories, but I should back up. So as a follow-up, then she said, we use ClassDojo, which is, a behavioral management system. So I've used this before a pretty fair amount. And the system does have a lot of depth. All she used it for was behavioral management. And so what she would do would just be to have ClassDojo up on the projector all day. And when you give somebody a point, it makes a little, it like sounds a bell. There's a little sound. So you have that sound turned up in the class. And so if Catherine is the only one sitting at her desk working quietly like she's supposed to be, you say, wow, I'm really impressed with Catherine for doing this or that. And then you like make a show of, going on the projector and clicking on Catherine's name and clicking to give point for, hardworking or whatever. And then it works like magic. Like I was a little skeptical about the whole positive reinforcement thing, but man, it sets them on track so good. And again, it helps that they're really good kids in the first place. But I couldn't believe it, how well it worked, just like the fake points. And because I asked her, I was like, well, what do you do with the points? It's like, usually nothing. But it's just it's something, it embodies, an idea, and there doesn't necessarily even have to be a reward, I guess. So that was cool. I have checked out some of the other stuff. I liked how, I don't know if you saw this, I liked how there's like, I forget what it's called now, but it was like deeper learning or like brain exploration or something like that. And it was like videos about behavioral management. So like, for instance, I watched an example of one where like, a kid goes up to make a speech and he starts getting nervous, and then it becomes this educational video about how you can like manage your emotions and like not let your emotions get the best of you in tense situations, whether it's nervousness or anger or whatever. And maybe taking some time to think over, calm down and become more rational. So it has a ton of those, which I think could be useful. And yeah, it has the kind of Facebook-ish parent feature that seems, I mean, I wouldn't like rely on that, but it does seem useful. Just because I certainly wouldn't count on all the parents to like join the class. But yeah. No, overall, and again, this just from my experience using it, I've been pretty impressed so far, and I haven't even used like half of what it has to offer. I've had very few negative experiences with it. I guess I would agree with you. Maybe a little more customization would be nice. Sometimes, so the kids get kind of random monsters, on for their names, and so some of them maybe will complain, oh, I want that monster, that kind of thing. But I've been real happy with it so far in using it. So
yeah. Well, I suppose I'll lead that up to the next point. So my main thing with it was, all right, you can customize attributes that the students exhibit, not getting out of their chair or doing their homework on time and whatnot. You can customize that. And the point system, for younger age groups, that the positive reinforcement of a point system that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but still sort of conveys a positive principle, kind of like a brownie point, if you will.
Yeah.
yeah, I totally see how that's a positive thing. My main concern with it was it's not quite as sophisticated in its measurement of prolonged behavior. And this brings me to my next point. This is what I really liked about TeacherKit. I thought this was a really just amazingly sophisticated tool. So, once again, basically a mobilized version of your classroom. You can create class summaries on it, student summaries, seating charts, grade books, and it has a nice diagramming software that puts in the form of a graph or a chart the particular behavior pattern that a student has exhibited, and you can clearly see through one of these graphs or charts how often the behavior occurs and over what span of time. And you can customize that. You can make it a pie graph, you can make it a bar graph. There's a lot of different options there. The software is pretty advanced, and you can create with that. You can create diagrams for each student along with notes, and it just adds that much more sophistication to the learning profile cards of a student and their academic performance. However, if you had to, I really like it, but if I had to find a fault with it, I would say maybe the sheer volume of data available about students could lead to an overemphasis on numbers and these measurements, even though I think the measurement's a good thing, but maybe you could get too caught up in the numbers and measurements instead of doing some good old-fashioned just reflection on a student, and just sort of leaving yourself alone with your thoughts while you're observing the students and sort of feed off of yourself and what they do exactly. I still think there's definitely a place for just the reflection, similar to what we do for Teach Now, but for a student, right? So yeah, that would be, I guess, the one fault I could find with that. It could be to put it into a phrase, a less organic way of observing students, perhaps. And the distraction could be that a teacher gets distracted a bit too much with just keeping track with this very advanced system of a student, and doesn't give that just organic reflection time. So it could possibly distract from traditional teaching practices that perhaps still do have a place and should have a place along with this program. How I would basically put it.
So the distracting thing, that's a good point, Micah. Probably the one negative thing I've seen with Class Dojo is when you start giving positive points, then sometimes kids will later on be doing something because they want the point, and they'll be like, and then they'll come up to you and be like, teacher, I'm sitting at my desk working, do I get a point? And so you can get, it's kind of like what you're saying, you can get a little too reliant, or the kids, I guess, can get a little too reliant on it. So you have to have that talk about you don't get a point if you ask for it or something. Anyway. And actually, as long as we're kind of on the subject of specificity, I'm going to go ahead and toss in one of the apps I looked at was Super Duper Data Tracker, which sounds kind of similar to what you're describing, Micah. I didn't do TeacherKit, but it's an iPhone/Android/iPad app. That's the same thing, where you can kind of record instances of behavior. How often does it happen? What happens exactly? You can add notes. You can organize students in the class. And so it's exactly what it says. It's just it is pretty lowbrow. It's not really pretty or anything, but it's just a data tracking tool that you can use in the classroom. And it's pretty flexible, so you could use it for honestly a lot of stuff meant for the classroom. But the only thing about that is learning to use it. There's this tutorial video, which is the driest thing I've ever watched. So you'd have to do it the hard way, or suffer through 9 minutes. Just this guy just going on and on. But so one of the pros that they were talking about in the video and also in the reviews were that with kind of a tablet data recording app, that is a lot more efficient and a lot quicker than, if your goal is to record that data, it's quicker and more efficient than writing down with a pencil. It's a lot easier to be on the tablet, just kind of swipe around and click buttons. That was the big, and the other thing was, so calculations are done automatically. So a lot of times, you'll want to know what percentage of the time is, this thing happening when this other thing happens. Those are all automatic. You don't need to scratch those out.
Wow.
So yeah, those were the big pros that were listed. The cons were that there were no individual results within group work. So I guess it's hard, like if you set your class up as a group, it's harder to look at data about individuals. And also apparently you can't save results from different sessions, which seems a little strange. Now, I don't know about TeacherKit, Micah, but the two apps I did, SuperDuper Data Tracker included, neither of them are on the computer. They're only for tablets or smartphones. So it is something that you would have to be using with, like, an iPad in the classroom. It's not, as opposed to Class Dojo, which you can do on the computer. Again, like I was saying, you can, just project it on the whiteboard and leave it up there all class. You can't necessarily do that with this guy. But,
yeah, I see. Yeah, that's interesting. I like the bit about keeping track of like the times that things happen as well. That creates very exact record keeping. And I wonder if it's like TeacherKit in that there's a very advanced backup system. You could like save it to your Dropbox. Or
right. Yeah, I didn't see about that. There's quite possibly some kind of integration with it, but I didn't read anything about that. My guess is no, because it says that one of the complaints was that you can't save results from different sessions, but it's possible.
Oh yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next app that I explored. I wasn't a big fan of it.
Was TeacherKit?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
TeacherKit only on mobile devices? Do you know, or was it also on the computer?
No, you could access it on the computer
as
well.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So for me, the next one I did was Instant Classroom. I wasn't a very big fan of it at all. It seemed mainly just to keep track of all the students in your classroom and their desk organization. And you can print an image of the desk organization. It kind of reminded me of the teaching map tool that we used for last week's assignment.
Was it like that, like dragging and dropping shapes or something?
It was just desks, like rearranging desks around with people's names on it.
Okay.
And well, fair enough. If it is what it is, right? I mean, if it's just a thing to sort of map out the desk in a classroom, that's fine. But even that being the case, I feel like there are a number of things that you could add here. I feel like it was very basic. You could add what resources you have in the classroom, what tools are used, pencils, pens, projectors, what the students' preferences are in the seating arrangements, how maybe notes on how students behave according to these seating arrangements. Then, maybe some notes on like what an individual student needs, or maybe what they do in their seat. Are they fidgety? Are they very calm? Yeah, I didn't find that much value in it. I mean, it's great to be able to have a printed image of your classroom, but it very much lacked detail even for the program that it was. I found it's very raw, bare bones.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like much. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wasn't gonna say too much about that. Just yeah, it kind of seems like at a certain point, an app has to offer like a minimum amount to using it. But, like, convince me that I shouldn't just in like a PowerPoint slide. In other words, you know what I mean? Like, have enough stuff so that I would actually use this because it's clearly superior to the default, which would be something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, I could take a picture of the seating arrangement in my classroom as well, you know? So yeah, like what does this service give me that other services do not give me? Yeah. That being said, would you like to talk about the other app that you explored?
Yep. So the other one I looked at was Best Sand Timer. Sand timer meaning hourglass. And so it just does what it says. It serves as both a stopwatch and a timer. And it does it with like a, an hourglass graphic, and it has little colored pixelated grains of sand dropping out down to the bottom. It's exactly what it says. Also pretty simple, useful though, as a timer. And it has, the fact that it's an hourglass, I think adds a kind of visual aesthetic that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's I could draw a lot of parallels to the one you just did. Very simple, basic usage. However, I would argue that it's like an appropriate usage and not necessarily something that I could do on my own. Although, I mean, I do. I have a timer on my smartphone, but it would be nice to use that. Well, so actually, the thing about Sand Timer, it's Best Sand Timer. This is another one that was not for the computer. That was only for iPad, iPhone, and Android. And so to me, the appeal of the Sand Timer was watching the hourglass. So it's something that I would put. It's something that I would put on the projector during quiet reading time, and the risk of being distracting, I guess. If the point is the visual appeal, then I want me or my students to be able to see it. So in the classroom, on a personal device, it doesn't seem to make a ton of sense to just have the visual, but
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I thought, I figured it'd be interesting to put that on the projector.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not for the computer, strangely.
Maybe you could find a way to connect to your iPhone.
Right. Another complaint was the free version has ads, so that definitely ruins the visual aesthetic.
Yeah, you don't want that going on during a test.
Yeah. The paid version is cheap. I think it's $2, but I'm not sure it adds anything other than getting rid of the ads. Now, one interesting thing that I read about this was that it actually has some uses for managing behavior. So there were a couple of parents that were reviewing that thing that were saying, forget the timer, this thing calms my kids down. If my kids are getting upset and I send them in the corner with the sand timer, just literally watching the hourglass, watching the sand drain through the hourglass, mesmerizes them and calms them down really quickly. So
yeah.
I don't. Maybe that was part of the point. I don't think that was the point of the app, but it's a really interesting and useful side effect, I guess. All right, watch the hourglass for 10 minutes, and
hey, why not? If just be creative with your use of it, so yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was cool and interesting. So that's a nice little side effect. All that having been said, ultimately, ClassDojo has a timer anyway. So as far as classroom use goes, I would have almost no reason to get the sand timer, best sand timer whatsoever. But, for the maybe for my own kid, if they had an iPad or something, I'd put the timer on there.
Yeah.
But for the classroom, I don't know. I don't see it. So
yeah, well, maybe that's a good segue into going back to ClassDojo and our recommendation on it. So for me, I think it's still a great tool. That my only concern was it doesn't have a sophisticated measurement system as TeacherKit does. And so that's just me comparing it to that. But I suppose something could always be better. But I was just able to research and explore this for this assignment. I've never actually used it the way you have, right? And it sounds like you have some positive experiences with that. The being able to have the students have their own pictures of monsters in it is great. It seems a little bit more catered towards younger age groups, which I could benefit from.
Yeah.
The point system, sort of making a bit of a ceremony as to which monster gets the point or the negative point or this point for exhibiting student behavior. That's good. And, and maybe, you could have a thing of, oh, well, Susie, she has 10 positive points today, of 10 different kinds. And you can create a measurement system in your classroom as to, who's going to get the guitar player to come in and sing for the kids, or who's going to present on, a topic that they really want to present, or like maybe they want to do a show and tell. That way it's not so much a reward system as giving them more freedom to do something in the class they want to do. They want to come in and talk about their bike that they got, or their new video game that they got, just to give them some time to express themselves and also get to know their fellow students better. So it has sophistication. It's individualized to the student. You can customize it. And yeah, all right, maybe not all parents would use it, but you can still get parents involved. The average Chinese parent, I can tell you, most of them would probably be involved with that. Just man, that's just my experience, though. And yeah, so I thought it's a great tool, and it mainly it acts as a student profile card that's customized to them, while also being able to monitor and enforce positive behavior, and also keep parents have a clear picture of what their students' behavior looks like. So the parent could see what behaviors they exhibited today, if problems continued, et cetera, et cetera. So overall, I would definitely recommend this tool, and it sounds like you would as well.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention earlier was that it definitely is geared more towards younger kids. So it's not really something I would use beyond elementary school. That said, for elementary school, I think it's great. I honestly, I like the meaningless points because it puts the power in your hands in terms of how you want to handle the points as the teacher. Whether that is nothing or, what you were saying, you can come up with your own ideas of how to reward kids if that's something that you want to do. But yeah, speaking from the field, I've had fantastic experiences with it. Certainly in kindergarten, using the more positive reinforcement stuff really gets them in order really quick. So as a behavioral tool, it's great. And again, that was a fraction of the services that I had to offer. So to me, it kind of, when you're talking about technology in the classroom, you kind of have the question of like, ultimately, is this like benefiting me as a teacher? Is this benefiting my class? And to me, the answer is yes. As opposed to, for instance, the mapping tool you were talking about, like, why should we use this? But there's a clear answer for ClassDojo for me, which is mostly about the behavioral management, at least for younger kids, and it's worked really well so far. So yeah, just speaking from experience, I've been pretty impressed. So I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I suppose that's what we've learned in ClassDojo. Excellent. Teacher Kit, I found excellent. You said Super Data Tracker, you found great as well. Instant Classroom, I didn't find so well due to just its bare bonesness, but you kind of like that about the Quicksand app that you spoke of, just because it could just be a good tool, and as long as you can connect it to a projector, it's just kind of a nice little thing to have. I mean, like, teaching is all about, you need the pedagogy and the philosophy about how to teach and monitor behavior, and it's good to have advanced tools like ClassDojo and Teacher Kit and Super Data Tracker, but it's also nice to have those little tricks, those little ornaments in your classroom that kind of make it somewhat unique for the students too. And like the Quicksand thing, that sounds like one of those. So yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else to say, Zach?
No, that was about it. Good discussing this with you.
Yes, likewise. All right, Glinda, this is Zach and I wishing you very well, and we await your feedback on our little hangout today. And I will go ahead and send you the link right now. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Micah.
Yeah, thank you. Nice talking to you, Zach. It was a pleasure.